about occult herbalism and um, shadow work for witches and what that means. So if you have questions, please put them in and feel free to comment and share knowledge that you might have. Um, my name is Leandra Witchwood. I have been practicing over 25 years, and much of my practice is in shadow work, occult herbalism, or magical herbalism, whichever you prefer. And there's a lot of there's a lot to this. So I'm sure many people have tons of questions about this kind of thing and what it means for their practice, what it means for them as an individual, and how to utilize it so that it doesn't get out of hand or it doesn't get overwhelming. Welcome in, and if you have questions, post them. If you clarification on maybe something that you heard or that you thought you heard, feel free to chime in. So the card we have, the child that was meant to be, and this comes from my dark mirror. And this is a very dark set that deals directly with what you need to focus on, what you need to do, what you need to make evident or be aware of in your practice. And the child within, this is one of the only cards in the deck that has color. And this is talking directly to that child within and doing the things for that child within. And this is a big point when we're doing shadow work that we focus on is that child, healing that inner child, healing the child that was abused or traumatized, the child that had to develop skills no child should have to develop. And so when we're talking about shadow work, we're talking about the divination within shadow work. This is some of the work we do. So to give you some background of what I do, I am an author and I am a shadow work coach. What that means is I have written books on shadow work and I make shadow work part of my practice. And there's a lot of other things that I do. I don't want to bore you with all the details because you can go to the link in my bio and to my profile on my website and learn all about all my certificates and my qualifications for the work. So the main things I work with is herbalism. I own the Witchwood Tea House where I hand blend teas for different purposes. I even have a tea that is for shadow work. Currently today, if you see in right above the card there, I am drinking my chai masala today. And this one is, I'm drinking it cold because it's hot here. I don't know if it's hot where you are, but it's hot here. I thought the morning was going to be a precursor to what it was going to be like today, but the morning lied. The morning was great, and it started getting hot as soon as the sun came out from the clouds. And so I'm hiding in my office, and I thought, hey, you know what? I'm hiding in my office. Let's go live and let's talk to some, right? Let's talk about some witchy shit because it's fun. So like I said, if you have any questions, feel free to come on in and ask your questions. If you want clarification on maybe something that you've heard or maybe thought you heard or thought you understood, but maybe you weren't sure about that, feel free. Just to give you some background on who I am, what I do. I am the host of the Magic Kitchen podcast. I co-host it with Elise Wells, and this is where we bring our 2 decades of experience between us. Between us is probably about 40 years of experience, but between us, each of us has been practicing for more than 2 decades. And we were just talking the other day about the changes that we each have seen in witchcraft over the past couple of decades. And they're amazing. Like, I love to see how it evolves, it grows, how things change, and what used to be the be all end all is no longer. and it's becoming more loose, more freeform, more encouraging to those who just want to live a magical life. And that's what I'm all about. I'm all about living that magical life. I host the I curate, not just host it. I curate the Rebel Mystic community, and this is where I do mentoring for witches of all sorts, from new witches to experienced witches. We get together every single month. I host mentoring sessions where we talk about these types of things. Like, what do you do with banishing powder? How do you make banishing powder? What do you do with leftover herbs? How do you deal with leftover spell components? And how do you deepen your practice? Um, I offer free courses in the community if you want to go check it out. The links are in my bio. And I offer 2 free courses right now: Witchcraft for Beginners, which is a great starting point for those who want to learn the craft but don't know where to start. Maybe, you've been on TikTok, you've been on other social media outlets, and you feel like there is this just bombarding of information, different opinions, different ways of doing things. One thing I will tell you right now is I will never tell you how to do your practice. I will never tell you how to do your spell. I will give you suggestions. I will give you options. I will give you perspective from my own experience and what works and what does not work for me. And then you can run with it and do what you're going to do with it. Because I really feel like if we're going to really know our path, if we're really going to understand our path, we have to get our hands dirty. We have to experience it for ourselves. We can't just sit back and let somebody else tell us how it's going to be, because that's not truly experiencing it. That's just gaining knowledge. We have to use that knowledge. So with the card pull that I have today, it relates to the shadow work aspect of what I do. And that leads into the other free workshop I have available in the community, which is the shadow work for beginners. And this one is a bare bones introduction to shadow work, getting you acclimated to it from a witchcraft perspective. It melds Jungian psychology with shamanic witchcraft practices. So it's more wholesome instead of analytical. And it really speaks to what we need to do here from what this card is showing us today, which is honoring that child that was meant to be. So if you see in the card, the visual is the full moon, which full moon is typically the stage of acceptance. And it's a card within this deck. It is one of the very few cards that is bright and colorful. So this one gives you clarity. It gives you a visual that is more, it draws you in with color rather than with the darkness of this deck. Again, I'm using the Dark Mirror deck by Laura Sava. And this is one of my favorite decks when I'm doing shadow work, because it speaks directly to our common shadows, the shadows that we trip on. I know you know that feeling. You trip over yourself when you are trying to do the right thing. You're trying to make progress. You're trying to bring in prosperity. So this one you see, magenta and lemon and yellow and blue sky in the back. And it's the face of a young, gentle woman, almost childlike. And the idea here is that she's dreaming. And what do children do? They dream, right? Anything's possible when you're a child. Anything is possible. You can be an astronaut. You can be the president of the United States of America. You can be a dancer, a singer. Whatever your heart desires as a child, that is what we believe we can be. And it's not until we get older, we're taught, that it becomes indoctrinated into us that the reality of it all is that you can't do those things. And we start to stifle that child within, start to see the darkness creeping in, as you see in the edges of this card. You see in the background behind her, darkness starting to creep in. And the clarity becomes fleeting. You can no longer see how possibilities are endless. We can no longer see that our dreams are within our grasp, and that lingering doubt begins to grow. It becomes our veil that starts to envelop us. So, what this card is teaching us right now, when it comes to shadow work, is beware of the smoke and mirrors. Beware of the ways that we stifle that creative sense within us, that child within that is curious, that knows that there's endless possibilities, child within that knows that there's potential within. And that potential is not based on what what value someone else puts on us. That potential is based directly on our own potential, our own value that we put on ourselves, and the purity of heart that's there. This card also speaks to the promise of purity, that it can be regained, that childlike wonder can be regained, that faith in yourself is how you reactivate the state of being valuable to yourself and dreaming the possibilities and knowing that those possibilities can come true. Maybe there's some possibilities that absolutely can't because they're just too absurd. But in a sense, they do come true. They live on in your mind. They live on in laughter. They live on in dreaming. And this is part of how we honor the child within. We allow that child to imagine, to dream, to be whole without judgment, without boundaries. So when we are working shadow work as witches, we go deep and we go into almost a trance-like state where we are remembering how to be. We remember who we are. We remember what mattered to us. Anyone has any questions, and post them. I am across different platforms here, so I'll get questions from every which direction. Um, Now that we looked at this card in detail and we understand its meaning and its presence in shadow work, and maybe for you this resonates, maybe this is a card that you really need to look at and hone in on, because you need you need to reawaken that child within. You need to let that child within become whole again and surface. Maybe she wants to paint. Maybe he wants to play tag. Maybe a game of other sorts. So, my fairy tea would be a great one to drink because it changes color. The way I blend it, it uses this specific ingredients, and in the different combinations of those ingredients, each cup is different. So it's plays on that sense of wonder. It plays on that sense of fun. Hey, what surprise am I going to get this time? Is the tea going to be yellow? Is it going to be purple? Is it going to be gray? Yes, you can get gray out of that tea. And it's so fun and entertaining because it's one of those things that it's unexpected when you go to drink it, because each cup is going to be different. And it plays with that child aspect, that childlike aspect, wonder of child aspect. Another herb that I would use is dandelion. Think about it. When you were a kid, what was one of your favorite things to do if you saw a dandelion field? You wanted to go run in it and watch everything fly. You wanted to pick them up. You wanted to make a wish. So dandelion would be another great herb to work with the child within to help ignite that sense of wonder and help ignite that sense of childlike fun and exploration, and bringing yourself to a point of acknowledging that there is more within us. There's more to life than paying bills and going to work to pay more bills and that sort of thing. If you're just joining me, I am discussing witchcraft, shadow work, and occult herbalism. We just went over the card, the child that was meant to be, in the deck I use for shadow work when I'm working with my clients and working with my students in my Rebel Mystic community and the academy. And the concept here is entertaining the child within, bringing the child within to the forefront where we can play again, where we can imagine. So another herb that would be a really fun herb to play with and to entertain that child within, for me, and this might not resonate with you, but snapdragons are another one. If you've ever seen a snapdragon or ever played with a snapdragon, they're kind of fun. You can make a little puppet out of them, so to speak. And we used to have so much fun making these snapdragons talk, putting on our own little puppet show. And the powers of snapdragon are protection. They help us protect that child within. They help us surround ourselves with that fire energy that helps us be authentic without worrying about being harmed in our authenticity. And that is one of the, I think, the toughest things when it comes to shadow work, when we are working with the shadow, is fear. Fear of change, because we might not relate to those around us anymore because we're growing and they're not. Fear of being seen, because if we're seen, then we can be criticized. Then, of course, fear of criticism, fear of being told that we're wrong for being who we are and doing the things that make us feel fulfilled. So there's other ways that we can entertain that, where maybe we're not in the direct vision of others who might look at us with the side eye or look at us in judgment. You know, we can take time alone or take time with those we know we can trust and entertain that child within. Maybe it is about going to a soccer game or taking an archery class or an art class and just exploring and painting and laughing and allowing yourself to be entertained, allowing yourself to giggle, allowing yourself to feel light and free. I'll pause for any questions if anybody wants to ask a question. I will only be on for a little while longer. But if you have any questions that maybe you don't want to ask in the live, but you can go to my links in my bio and find out more about the Rebel Mystic community, about the courses I offer, the free ones, as well as the paid portion of the community. You will find links that'll lead you to the podcast where Elise and I dig a little deeper into a lot of these concepts, into a lot of different topics that will help you on your path. You'll also find a link there for my dark mirror coaching, where I lead witches through shadow work under the lens of witchcraft, or through the lens of witchcraft, where we include shamanic practices, Reiki, spells, rituals, and of course, helpful journaling exercises and other exercises that help us work through our shadow. One of the questions I get most often is, why do we do shadow work? What's the point? What's the purpose of it? The purpose of it, essentially, is to become better than we were yesterday. And this isn't a comparison type of better. I don't mean better than Joe Schmo over here or the Joneses over there. I mean better than you were yesterday. You. The only person you're comparing yourself to is you. Shadow work helps us identify and avoid triggers that send us into a downward spiral, things that would derail any progress we ever made. So if you ever notice that you are working towards a big goal and you get so close to that goal and something happens, stop you. Like, let's take saving money as an example. That one's one of the biggest ones that I find reoccur for most people. So it's relatable. So you're saving money for a trip. Okay. You're almost there. You almost have all your money saved. You're making your plans. You're getting ready to go, right? Maybe it's just a 1-day trip. Maybe you're just going to the Ren Fair or a fairy festival, or maybe you are taking a 2-week vacation, whatever it is. And you get so close, and maybe a week or two before you're supposed to leave for this trip, suddenly something happens to your car and you have a huge expense that you have to dip into that savings to take care of, because you have to have your car or you can't get to your job. And if you don't have your job, you're not making money, then you can't go on your trip, right? You can't save that money. So if this is something that seems to be a pattern for you, there's a shadow there that is stopping your progress. There's a message there that is letting you believe, or leading you to believe, that you're not worthy of this trip, that somehow there's a message that tells you that somehow you don't deserve it. So subconsciously, we sabotage it. If it was a repair in your car that could have been prevented, you ignored it. So instead of dividing up your funds and maybe delaying your trip a little bit to fix your car, you instead just ignored it and hoped it would go away or happen after the trip, after the fact, so that you could deal with it later. So these are some shadows that we learn to identify, some stumbling blocks we learn to identify as we walk the path of the shadow witch or do shadow work in our craft. And it's important because if we keep up with the same habits and mindsets that keep us from progress, we're never going to get to where we need to be or where we want to be. And we know we deserve better. We deserve better in this life. We don't deserve to live a life where our entire existence is to create bills that we have to work hard to pay those bills. You go to work, pay the bill, go to work, pay the bill. Is that really all life is about? I don't believe that. And I don't believe any of us want that kind of life where we are a slave to the dollar. I think we want to live a life where we can go to the lunar fair if it's in our area because it's here and we have the money to do it and we can do it. I think that's the type of life we want to live. We want to live a life where we can go to the Renaissance fair and spend the money there because we can, but because we're prepared for it and we have that cushion, we have that ability. And we're not living a life just to pay these bills, to fill our lives with meaningless things. And I think that's the American sickness, is where we are stuck as Americans, is we're here working, paying bills, and not getting anywhere. We're not living a better life because of it. The whole, it cracks me up every time I hear this because it's such cunning marketing technique and most people have bought into it. You've heard the Walmart tagline. What is it? Like, spend less, live better, or something like that. But how many people do you really know? How much better is your life when you go take a trip to Walmart and buy stuff? Your life's not that much better. Yeah, maybe for a few minutes you're like, oh, this is a cool thing, I got it. And then it gets stuck on a shelf and it loses its value. It's a cheap thrill. Shadow work and witchcraft is meant to empower us to live a more fulfilled life, to live the life that is filled with love and value that no one can buy. You can't buy that. You have to create it for yourself. If there are any other questions, let me know. I am going to be getting off here soon. Give you another couple of minutes, and I will be heading out for the day. So if you have any questions about shadow work, about witchcraft, about the Rebel Mystic community, about occult herbalism, feel free to ask. Okay, I don't seem to have any questions filtering through. So I am going to call it a day, and I hope you all have a wonderful, blessed day. And remember this card that we have here, the child within. Honor that child within. Give her some time to play, or him some time to play. Give them time outside to play, or with a game. Maybe there's a cozy little witchy game that you've been meaning to play on Steam that you want to get into. Whatever it is, read a book, play with some paints,